Hey everyone, welcome back to Barter Hordes. My name is Robert. I'm actually here to do a tag video today. I've never done a tag before, haven't been doing this very long at all. And Leah at Hide and Seek tagged me in the Future Classics tag, which was originally put up not too terribly long ago by Eric at the Lonesome Reader. So I have put links to both of their versions of this tag video in the description box below. So if you haven't checked out Leah's channel, she's relatively new. She's been around 4 months, so a little longer than me, but she's still a relatively new booktuber, and her channel is wonderful. I enjoy her insights. And Eric, of course, is one of the big names. He's been around for a while, and he does all sorts of videos, review videos, book hauls, a little bit of everything. And he talks about the prizes a lot, and he reads a lot of the short lists. So the 5 questions are also listed below, and I'll get the tagging part of it out of the way right up front. I am kind of on the fence about tags. I was thrilled to be tagged by Leah to do this, but I've noticed that the tags that I've watched over the last 6 months before I started my channel all seem to go in circles. The same people tag the same people, and it became almost kind of cliquish. And I've kind of objected to that. So my version of tagging people is that if you want to do this video, you're tagged. Please put a link to yours in my comments, and so I can watch what your answers are, because this is all based on 50 years from now. Now, Eric's much younger than I am, and he has the luxury of probably will still be around in 50 years to see if his predictions came about. I won't still be alive in 50 more years because I'm already in my late 50s now. So I can be as wrong as I need to be on these, and it doesn't matter. I won't be around to see how wrong I was. But it's an enjoyable tag trying to predict what might be fashionable, what might have staying power 50 years from today. So let's go through the 5 questions. The first one is, pick an established classic you think will still be relevant in the future. My quick English teacher's answer that popped into my head would obviously be Shakespeare's plays. They've lasted 400 years, they're gonna last 50 more. But that seemed a little bit too easy, so I gave it some more thought. And one of the books that I also generally taught to my seniors in AP Literature was the dystopian classic 1984 by George Orwell. It was written in 1949, so it's almost 70 years old already. It doesn't seem like it's been around that long, but it has. But interestingly enough, it has been a bestseller this year. So that shows you that it still has a lot of topical relevance. And given the dumpster fire nature of our current government and the abuses of power in government and the world relations, international relations that are troubling every place on the globe, I'm pretty sure that this kind of book about how government intrudes on our lives is still going to be relevant 50 years from now. So I'm going to go with 1984 for this first question. The second question is, pick a recent book which you feel has gone under the radar, but which you're confident will be a future classic. Until a couple of months ago, I would say my choice went way under the radar. It didn't make the bestseller lists in hardback. I read it because I saw a few reviews of it on BookTube that were favorable, and I was interested in the topic because it's set in a time period that I'm also researching for a project of my own, and so I read it for that reason, and it turned out to be my favorite read from last year, and that's Min Jin Lee's Pachinko. Suddenly, though, Pachinko is everywhere because Min Jin Lee was a finalist for the National Book Award here in the United States, and now everybody's reading it. The book's out in paperback here in the States now, and it's on all the bestseller lists. So it did fly under the radar for a while, but the elevation of awareness from the National Book Award has made it very prominent. If you haven't read it, it's a historical novel. It's a saga of several generations of a Korean family. It starts in 1915, shortly after Korea is annexed by Japan. And some members of a Korean family ultimately have to go to Japan to find work in this particular time, and it follows 4 generations of the I think it's 4 generations of the family, and the way they're treated by the Japanese government, by the Japanese population. It's just an absolute wonderful book. Like I said, it was my favorite read last year, and it's going to be one of my favorites for many years to come. So Pachinko by Min-Jin Lee is my second choice. The third question is about book prizes. Pick a title that won one of your favorite book prizes recently, which you think will still be lauded in 50 years' time. I'm kind of playing fast and loose with this a little bit. I'm going to give you, first of all, I'm going to give you 3 titles instead of 1. The first one is the recent winner of the Man Booker Prize, which was George Saunders' Lincoln and the Bardo. I think because of Saunders' reputation already, and because of his experiments in style and language and form in Lincoln and the Bardo, this one could have legs, and 50 years from now people will still be talking about it and still reading it. It's the kind of book I can see people teaching in English classes because of its formal experiments. I also happen to really enjoy it, especially if you haven't read it yet. Do it with the audiobook. The audiobook has a cast of voices. I think there are well over 100, I forget the exact number. And it's just brilliantly done, and it makes the book even more enjoyable than just reading it off the page. The second one is also a very recent prize winner, and that is this year's winner of the National Book Award, and that's Jessamine Ward's Sing Unburied Sing. Jessamine Ward has been talked about in the same breath as William Faulkner's descriptions of Mississippi. She's also been linked with the novels of Toni Morrison, and she's often seen in the tradition of those 2 great writers who obviously are considered classic writers. So I think there's a good chance that Jessamine Ward's book will also end up in that category. And the third one, where I'm cheating a little bit, it's a little bit of an older book. It came out in 1980, it won the Booker Prize in 1981, and that's Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children. The reason I'm including it here is because in 1993, it was chosen as the Booker of Bookers. They went back and looked at the first 25 years of winners of the Booker Prize and awarded Midnight's Children as the best of all those. So I think it's already established itself as a modern classic, and it's still one of the most fabulous books I've ever read. If you haven't read it, you should. It is set in India at the stroke of partition in 1947, if my history is right. I may have that date wrong. But it follows a group of children who were born at midnight on that same date, and they all have some unusual characteristics and powers. But it's just it's a tour de force of writing, a brilliant book. And it will teach you about India's history, but it will also just take you on a wild adventure. It's a wonderful book. I love it. So Midnight's Children, I'm going to throw in that category, even though it's not really a recent book. Okay, the fourth question is pick a recent book you haven't read yet, but which you think might become a classic based on reputation alone, whether because of reviews or GoodReads responses or BookTube recommendations, etc. And this one's impossible because it's asking you not only to predict 50 years into the future, but do so about books you haven't even read yet. So these are going to be wild guesses. And 2 of them are going to be British books because they came out before they'll come out here in the States, and I've seen a lot of reviews about them, so they're a little bit easier to make a prediction about. The other one is just a wild guess about a recent book in the United States. And the first one is Tin Man by Sarah Winman. Everybody who has reviewed this on BookTube has just raved about this being one of their all-time favorite books. I don't know anything about it other than it just keeps getting talked about by everybody. So I think it comes out next month here in the States. So it's definitely on my list to look for when it arrives. And the second one is in the same category. Ali Smith's Seasonal Quartet. She's published 2 of them now, Autumn and Winter, and they have been talked about by everybody. They were nominated for I think Autumn was nominated for the Booker Prize. It doesn't sound like the kind of book I would immediately be attracted to. One of the things I see on BookTube is that it's a novel that doesn't seem to really have a plot. And if you saw my review about the Golden Notebook, you know that kind of drives me crazy. So this may not be the book for me, but based on popularity of all the other booktubers that I pay attention to, it seems like it's a book that is going to be really important. And the third one is a recent American title by Mira T. Lee, Everything Here is Beautiful. And I've seen a lot of people talking about it. I recently picked up a copy, but I haven't started reading it yet. But everybody is raving about that one as well. So who knows? One or more of those might be still relevant 50 years from now. And the fifth and final question is, pick a favorite book you want to save for your grandchildren or your friends' grandchildren to read in 50 years' time. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm considerably older than Eric, who started this tag. My son just recently got engaged, so it's conceivable that I could be a grandparent in the next couple of years. So 50 years from now, my grandchildren might be in their 40s. I know a lot of people doing this tag have focused on children's books, but that doesn't really fit my timeline, so I'm not going to do that. Plus, I don't really have any specific childhood favorites that I adored when I was young. I don't remember a lot about the books that I read when I was young. I read a lot, I just don't remember them that well. So I went with something that sustained me all the way through my college years, and that is The Complete Calvin and Hobbes by Bill Watterson. Calvin and Hobbes is the best comic strip ever, and I'll fight you if you disagree with me. It's that good. His insights into human nature, the adorable and comical friendship between Calvin and Hobbes is precious. It's just an unbeatable collection, and like everybody else who's a fan of Calvin and Hobbes, I wish he had not stopped doing the cartoon, but at some point you have to let something go. I understand that, but it's just a wonderful collection. So I'm going to cheat and use a comic book collection for my fifth and final choice. So there you have it. In 50 years, you can write me. I won't be around to read it, but you can tell me how awful my choices were or how dead on they were, who knows. If you haven't done this tag, do it. If you are interested in these questions, it's fun to try to think about what people will still think is relevant in 50 years, because popularity and status now doesn't necessarily equate to popularity and status in 50 years. Things just don't work out that easily sometimes. And I'll be back in a couple of days with my next book review, and I'll talk to you then. Bye.